All right. So, Libby, welcome.
Thank you.
Starting off, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself and maybe what some of your goals are for this interview?
Okay, for the interview is just to learn more how to have a more productive, successful interviews in the future when I'm looking for a job.
Okay. So, and can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
I'm a returning student to KSU. I am fairly busy, so it's a slow path to graduate. I'm working part-time and have a family. And I'm just excited to get back into the workforce and make something mine.
Cool. All right. So a lot of times employers will ask this as kind of like a introductory question. So you want it whenever an employer asks about, tell me a little about yourself, you kind of want to think three things. What am I doing now? Maybe what have I done in the past, and where am I going?
Okay.
What am I doing? What have I done, and where am I going?
Okay.
So maybe you want to start out. What am I doing? I'm currently a student at Kennesaw State,
Okay.
majoring in public relations.
Okay.
I started my degree. I'm restarting my degree.
Yeah.
And then in the past, maybe if you're applying for an interview for a public relations firm, I've done some public, maybe talk about maybe something that you've done maybe in class or a skill that you've learned doing public relations, and then talk about and I hope to. What is your goal? I want to be able to work in the public relations field to be able to do X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
So I'm coming from a point of an employer that's interviewing you for public relations. So,
I'm totally rusty on this
yeah,
interview.
That's okay. Do you want to try that again? Do you want to try that question again?
Let's move on.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I feel like I'm still uncertain. Like, I think some of this is good for me to have these questions in the back of my mind to think, but I still feel like on the spot like this, I'm not sure I can come up with all those answers.
Well, this is the reason why we're doing this.
Yeah.
This is the reason why we're doing this
Yeah.
this interview practice. So you can kind of think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So next question. What do you consider your two greatest strengths and a weakness that you could that you could work on?
I think one strength is I'm adaptable, flexible. I can go with the flow, change, if something needs to happen quickly or be done, I can be on top of it. I think I am very team oriented also. I enjoy working with others. I feel like I get along well with others, enjoy working with them, and am understanding to the team's goals and others' perspectives. Something to work on would be maybe being more outspoken on my thoughts and goals and what I can bring to the table.
Good. So that was a pretty good answer. When you give your greatest strengths, the examples that you gave were good. Think about maybe tying into that example, tying into those strengths, and maybe giving an example. So, for instance, your first strength was that you were adaptable. So maybe it's like I'm adaptable. I work with a group certain group that I have to a lot of times I'm changing plans for whatever. Just you don't have to go into great detail, but give an example. Same thing with teamwork. So I work with a volunteer group with a lot of different members, and we often work as a team to So just giving a little example of your strengths and a weakness. When they ask about a weakness, the reason they're asking that is not because we want to know what you're bad at, but we want to know what you're not as quite good at, but then how are you
How can I improve?
how can you improve?
Okay.
So make sure that if they ask that question, you kind of have like, okay, yes, I'm one of my weaknesses is being able to be able to kind of speak up for yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm doing that in certain situations, and I'm making sure that I'm heard.
Okay.
And I'm really trying to work on that a little bit more.
Okay. That
So
makes
just think
sense.
about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
What kind of work environment do you normally prefer?
I love working with others, so I love open offices, being around people. Yeah. Sorry,
That's
I
okay.
totally
That's
blanked
okay.
on that
So,
one.
talking about like, the teamwork environment, open offices where there's a lot of people, you like to, I like, you like being sociable, you like being around
Yes.
people, you like to work with others in a team environment, maybe more open concept office where, you are connected in with, open door policy, talk about, being able to talk with managers, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You might even want to talk about your how you like to be managed. I like to work for people that are either have a more kind of direct management style or somebody that's a little bit more kind of hands off. So when asked about like a work environment, be able to kind of speak to.
Okay, because I guess I was just thinking just like the office area
Yeah.
and that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that.
But
the
there's so
question was
much
kind
more
of
to it.
vague.
Yeah.
So, but think about all the different kinds of work environment that you
Okay.
want to do and be
Okay.
able to talk about. Okay. How do you deal with pressure or stressful situations?
Lots of deep breaths. I feel that I've actually had a lot of different stressful situations through my life that I've just been thrown into. And so I feel like I've learned over the years to remain calm. I feel like when you get stressed and anxious, that just makes it worse. So if I can remain calm and remember the things that I've learned and the end goal and just keep working towards that and making sure when I need help or assistance, not be afraid to ask.
Cool. Do you do anything specifically to remain calm? Like, do you have a stress ball or do you just
Literally
like, breathe?
taking breaths
Yeah.
helps, and just telling myself it's okay, it will work out. It always works out. It always gets finished. It always is accomplished some way or another,
Okay. Good. That was a pretty good answer. So, just because most jobs come with a level of pressure, stress, deadlines,
sure,
whatever.
yeah.
And so employers are going to want to know, okay, do you get frazzled easily? Or, when you do get stressful, are you going to be somebody that's going to like run out of the office?
Be that crazy person.
Yeah. Or are you going to, how do you handle those stressful
Yeah.
situations? Are you going to, just take a breath? You need to like take a 5-minute timeout,
Yeah.
and so just kind of think about the steps that you do as a parent and whatever, you probably under a lot
Yeah.
of different stressful
Yeah.
situations. So maybe even think about a specific example of a time where you've been like really stressed out and what you did.
Here's the thing. Here's a question about that, because I have examples in my mind, but as we've talked in the class, what is it, like unlawful questions or whatever? Like, how much do you indulge about your? Like, I guess anything I would say I wouldn't want to say, well, because I'm a mom of four, or because my husband, this is how I've dealt with stressful situations, right? Like
you don't have to, you can disclose, just because you have a family is not going to disqualify you for a job. So it's like in my family, we've had certain situations where, in my family where it's been stressful situations and this is what I've done.
Okay.
So you don't have to go into detail about
Okay.
how many kids you have or their ages or whatever.
Okay.
But, you can be specifics like, maybe a stressful situation was, planning our trip or something
Okay.
like that where, we were under the gun and, I hadn't planned so much things and then maybe, I just took some time and made sure that I had all my
Yeah.
priorities.
Okay. So it doesn't necessarily have to be job oriented when I say.
Not necessarily.
Okay, it could be, but it doesn't. Okay.
I wouldn't go too in depth of any kind of personal.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But you can talk about your family if you want to.
Okay.
It doesn't have to strictly be about your job.
Okay.
Or employment related.
Okay.
So, but you don't want to go into, a diatribe of like,
Well,
my cousin was, blah blah blah, and she hated it. But
For sure, I just didn't know if
Yeah.
I should steer away from the whole talking family oriented anything, or
No, you
just
can,
kind of.
It's okay, but
Okay.
as long as it's on a more surface level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do you normally stay organized?
I have to have organization to thrive, honestly. With so much going on in my life, I'm pulled in a lot of different areas. So if I don't keep things organized, then things get forgotten, thrown by the wayside. I use my calendar a lot, set alarms, write lots of notes. I'm a little old school. My counter has Post-it notes on it. But I have to stay organized if I'm going to make sure that things are accomplished in a timely manner.
Good. So I would even go in a little bit more of particularly how you said, you use your calendar. Like, I write everything, every appointment on my calendar that I keep with me. I don't know if you keep it on your iPad too, or your phone.
Yeah.
And then you write notes. I do that too. I have sticky notes everywhere. I guess it's kind of a Gen X thing or whatever.
Yes.
But I keep notes and sticky notes and whatever, and just make sure that certain colors are for certain things and whatever. But just kind of again go into a little bit more detail of how you do that. Good.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to I'm going to ask you a couple of behavioral questions.
Okay.
And again, these questions talk about, they're going to want to hear about certain specific situations.
Okay.
And to be able to answer those, what we normally ask you to do is use the STAR method. Have you heard about the STAR method?
Yes.
Situation, or set the scene.
Yeah.
Task, action, and result.
Okay.
So basically, you're telling me a story.
Yeah.
You're relating a story. You're relating an experience. And basically, what you want to just make sure you include, set the scene up. What are you doing in that scene? What were the tasks? What were you doing in that situation? What were the actions that you did, and what was the result?
Okay.
Okay. So kind of think about that situation story.
Okay.
As you try to tell the story. Okay. I'm trying to do this. Can you tell me about a challenge or conflict you faced at work or at school, and how did you deal with it?
A conflict that I faced, I would say, right now as I'm subbing, I at one point had a part-time paraprofessional position in the special needs pre-K at my kids' elementary school. So that's 3, 4, some 5-year-olds with special needs. And the school that I work at does not get a lot of support maybe from administration.
Mm-hmm.
They focus more on the gifted, kids. And it was a full classroom. There was about 13 kids in there, getting up, running around, banging heads, some climbing, very unsafe situations happening. And there was 3 of us teachers in there, and so we needed to maintain safety for all students, at the same time making sure the other students were learning and developing and their needs were being met, and they were able to overcome their challenges and things that they're working on. So as a team of, a few teachers, we would set goals and come up with maybe even barriers. There's a lot of like big screens in the rooms and cabinets, and we would kind of have to block off certain areas and keep it safe. And some of us would be assigned certain students so that it wasn't, a student's climbing and it's like, who's going to get it? Or a student hit, who's going to deal with that? Is we had students that we took care of, and, we all knew our task and we were assigned different things, and we just pushed through the end of the school year with our particular tasks that we were each assigned, and we maintained the safety of the children, and everyone went home smiling and,
Mm-hmm.
content, maybe not totally happy, but content at the end of each day. And it was exhausting, but we felt empowered that we were able to figure the situation out on our own and be successful.
Good. So that was a pretty good answer.
Okay.
You set the scene. You told me the situation,
Uh-huh.
the classroom with special needs kids, the task of keeping them safe and making sure they didn't create themselves. Then you gave me the action that you did, that you were tasked for each of these students to take care of them, and the result that you were able to and so make sure that you kind of go in through all of those steps when you tell that situation. So that was a pretty good answer. Yeah.
Thanks.
I would be thinking about just being a little bit more concise with a lot. And the thing about behavioral questions is a lot of times you can go on for a long time talking about setting up the situation when we're really trying to get to the meat of the question, like what did you do?
Yeah, like how did you handle it?
How did you handle it? So think about that part of the answer is the most important.
Okay.
Not the setting up, but what did you do in the result?
Okay.
The A and the R is the most important part of that.
Yeah, that makes
the
sense.
S and the T.
Okay.
Good. Tell me about a time that you failed and how did you deal with it?
Oh gosh. The first thing that comes to my head is my kids. Like as a mom, I feel like I fail all the time, right?
I mean, it can be a personal thing. It can be a professional thing.
Yeah. Well,
and if you need to take a time, if you need to take a moment to think about it, that's completely fine.
Okay, because I was
you don't have to be like
beginning.
immediately.
Like,
No.
Okay.
They don't expect. I'm not going to be like, okay, she took 10 seconds to think about it.
Okay.
No, it's okay to kind of think about it, and if you need them to re-ask the question, that's completely fine as well.
Okay. A time I failed. The first thing that comes to mind is my kids in sports, and 4 of them, and deadlines for the sports, and I hadn't made it a priority for their sports, but to them it was so important, and one of my sons wanted to do flag football so bad. And I thought I did know when the deadline was, but if it fills up before the deadline, then you don't get in. And so I missed the deadline. Or no, I made the deadline, but it was full, so it didn't matter. And he was just devastated that he could finally play flag football, and I would finally let him enter that sport, and now he couldn't play. And so I felt like I had failed him, and I felt so guilty because I knew he was so excited, but I thought in my mind I had it all worked out. So I called the rec league, and I tried to see what I could do, and I called a couple other places to see if they had any placements, and in the end he did not get to play flag football that season. I did get him signed up for soccer, which he ended up loving, but I made sure the next time it was time to sign up for flag football that he was signed up as one of the first, and he was able to play.
Good. So that was a really pretty good answer.
Okay.
So you told the story, you set up the scene, the actions that you take, and that you also gave the results, but you also talked about what you learned from that. So I learned
Okay.
that, that you took other steps to be able to maybe fix that problem, and even if it wasn't successful, you were able to come up with alternatives, and that you learned from that time. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to make sure that
Yeah.
as soon as the open date starts, we're
Sign
going
up,
to sign
yeah.
up and whatever. So good.
Okay, cool.
Good. So kind of more,
Yeah.
thinking about, and the pace of that example was really good.
Okay.
So you didn't go into huge, detail,
Yeah.
but you were
Enough
able to
set the
yeah,
scene. Okay.
exactly. Good. One more. Give me an example of a time where you were able to be creative with your work. What was exciting or difficult about it?
Okay, so for a small time before I really started subbing, I love to sew and make quilts. And so for a small moment, I worked for a quilting shop, and it was a t-shirt quilting shop. So people bring in their t-shirts, you cut them into certain designs and sizes, whatever, and you put it into a big quilt. And so the longer I was there, I got to be creative with some of the placement of where t-shirts would go and what colors would go next to each other. And so that was really fun to put things together and make this product that I was gonna, that someone else was gonna get. And most of the time these were gifts to graduates or on weddings or, things like that. So it was a special thing. And so I felt it was fun to be a part of this creation. It would get frustrating sometimes because it was like putting together a puzzle. But there was no perfect way for it to be together, like a puzzle. And so that would be frustrating at times. And that's when I'd have to ask for assistance or help or other people's opinions on placement. But it was always very pleasing to get the finished product and to see what I had done and helped with.
Did you sell these quilts, or did you give them away? Or?
Well, people would come in to us and be like, my son is graduating. Here are all of his shirts from his, 12 years of education. Can you make this into a big, huge blanket? And some of them would be king size quilts of every sports or classroom t-shirt that they had saved.
Did for some of the quilts, did they express oh my gosh, these are
Yes. Oh, yes.
These are the best favorite. This is my favorite blanket in the world and stuff like
absolutely. Because it had so much, the t-shirts had so much meaning behind them, and to see them all put together it was really meaningful.
Awesome. I would include that part.
Okay.
To your answer too. That's more the kind of the result aspect.
Okay.
And that's of everything STAR, the result is the biggest thing. So
that makes sense.
Talk about this one quilt I did was for this a boy that made his t-shirts.
Yeah.
And he loved it, and it's his favorite blanket now and stuff, So good. What motivates you?
What motivates me?
Yeah, either in life or in your work or in your school. What motivates you?
Others. I like seeing and bringing joy to others. If I can make someone happy or make someone smile, it makes me happy.
Do you have an example of maybe helping someone or being able to do that?
A lot of times working with the special needs kids, and if they can accomplish one of their goals that they're working on, I love to see their excitement and their smiles on their face. And that motivates me to keep trying because I want to make a difference in people's life.
Awesome. That's a good answer. So you can be a little bit more specific. So when you started talking about, working with, especially your experience working with kids and stuff like that, bring that in. Tell me a little bit more about. Don't be afraid to to share a little bit more about specific examples of some of the things that you've done. To kind of give your answer a little bit more substance. So what are your career aspirations, and where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I want to be working for, my goal would be to work for like a nonprofit organization, something that is really, in my opinion, making a difference in people's lives. Foster care, adoption, children's health care, things around that kind of work.
Yeah, I would make sure that that's a great answer, but I would expound that a little bit. Just think, I definitely want to work in a nonprofit area, working maybe with children or whatever, maybe working in their PR department and being able to, communicate some of the things that they're doing, and I would love to be able to maybe even run my own public relations aspect or whatever, so just make sure you bring it back to some of the things that you're wanting to do as far as for your degree or anything like that.
Okay.
Good. So that's all the questions I have for right now.
Yeah.
You probably will, some of the things that you will need to think about again with an interview, you'll probably, if you go in an interview, you'll probably want to have a couple of questions that you can ask them. So think about that. If you interview with a specific company, research the company, maybe look on their website, look at their social media, think about some of the things that they do, maybe ask about, what kind of work environment that they have. You can ask questions about, what a typical day in
looks
somebody
like.
in that role. You can ask about their values, but I would always have at least 2 or 3 questions ready to go to ask to the interviewer. It shows interest, and it shows that you've done some kind of research into the company. So just keep that in mind. Also, virtual interviews are also a thing now, where you might be asked to do an interview on the computer, online via Zoom or Teams or whatever. So there are certain things that you just make sure that you need to consider. Definitely make sure that you're in an area with strong connections, that you're not going to lose connection, that you're in a nice, quiet environment. So if you're at home, make sure that your
kids are away
or outside, or I have dogs that love to bark at the most inopportune times, so make sure the dogs are downstairs or outside. And then you're in a neutral background. You can be in your house with paintings and stuff, but also know that people like to sit and judge too. So
not like sitting on your bed.
And with dirty clothes or whatnot. So just make sure that you take into some of those considerations when you're doing a virtual interview. And I always like to say, when you go on an in-person interview, you're going to want to be dressed professionally, but also even in a virtual interview. Even though they're only going to see from this up,
still,
it keeps you in that good mindset. If I'm dressed up for it, I'm still going to be ready to go. So just even virtual interviews, just make sure that you're dressed and ready to go. I really liked your eye contact and your kind of more kind of relaxed conversation style. That's what I would want. And you didn't seem uptight, or there were things that I felt like you could have expounded upon in some of your answers, but I think overall I liked your kind of more relaxed demeanor, and I really liked your eye contact. You kept an eye contact and you used your hands, which is great. You weren't stiff or anything like that. So just think about that and how are you going to present yourself in those interviews? How do you want them to see you? Because that's really going to be, they're going to think about, okay, is this a person that's going to be adaptable, that's going to be a good, because they're judging you too. They're judging your personality. They're judging how you are just in person. So you kind of want that to come across as well when you give your answers and stuff. So if you're sitting there like, they're like, oh, this guy's, oh. So just think about that in your interviews. Do you have any questions about this process or anything to ask me as far as interviewer or.
I feel like I should, but I don't like.
That's not-
I feel
no.
like I've learned so much, because I
Yeah.
haven't really done this in so long, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm starting from scratch, and I feel really rusty.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like this is a really good experience.
Cool.
So-
One of the things that we have on, I don't know if they've talked about it in your class, but we have an online interview platform